Hello, this is Tom for Tabletop Tap Room. We need to talk about the most overlooked and frankly most maligned mechanic in D&D, alignment languages. And I'll be honest, for years I thought they were ridiculous. And my logic was, okay, so every chaotic creature in the multiverse shares a secret tongue that makes languages like goblin and orc completely obsolete. Most of us just ignored them entirely, but I've recently was rereading Moldvay Basic cover to cover, and a specific phrase jumped out at me and stopped me dead in my tracks. So today on the tap room, we're looking at alignment languages and alignments, and I think I might have something for you that breathes fresh life into this much maligned rule and mechanic. All right. I just want to say thank you for watching the video, and don't forget that like, subscribe, and bell icon that help build the channel. And moving right along, alignment languages. Let's do a share screen. Here we go with alignment languages, and this is the sentence that got me. Each alignment, right here, each alignment, you see my cursor moving, each alignment has a secret language of passwords, hand signals, and other body motions. In other words, gestures. And it suddenly hit me, a comparison, an analogy. It's kind of like the sign of the cross in Roman Catholicism. You know, the whole, okay, it means something to a Roman Catholic, but a Muslim's going to look at it and know, you're doing something that means something to you. I don't really know what it means, but whatever. And here, if we look further in this paragraph, it says player characters and intelligent monsters will always know their alignment languages, and they will also recognize when another alignment language is being spoken, but will not necessarily understand it. Or excuse me, no necessarily, will not understand it. Alignment languages are not written down, nor can they be learned unless a character changes alignment. This little rule here about character changing alignment, and when this happens, the character forgets the old alignment language and starts using the new one immediately. I think that rule is really in there so that you don't have a loophole situation where somebody's chaotic and they're doing the law alignment language and deceiving lawful creatures. I think that's why they put it in there. And it's a very mechanical, it doesn't make sense that you suddenly completely forget a language and now you're using a new one. That doesn't make sense, but I think it's there just to prevent problems in game, because we have to remember this is a game. So looking at the text in Moldvay Basic defines an alignment language as a secret language of passwords, hand signals, and other bodily gestures. And I think we need to really focus on that. So it'll be a secret sign. So it'll be a secret sign, could be a gesture, could be just a password. This is not a full language. It's not a full spoken language. And if you think about it in the terms of an analogy that suddenly hit me, was the sign of the cross for Roman Catholics. Okay, and if you think about it in that analogy, yeah, this means something to a Roman Catholic, but to a Buddhist, they're going to be like, I know you're doing a thing. I know you're doing a language thing there. And if you look in the text, it does say that somebody's speaking a different alignment language. The person will know they're speaking some sort of language, but they don't know what's being spoken. They don't know the signs, because this doesn't mean that much to, say, a Buddhist or a Hindu or, somebody who practiced Shintoism or an animist on a deserted Pacific island, where they worship the spirits of the tree and the rock and the spirits of their ancestors. And so they're not going to recognize this. But you take a Roman Catholic from here in America that travels to the Philippines, okay, where they don't speak Tagalog, They could still walk into a Catholic church and they're going to follow the signs and the gestures, and they're going to be able to follow the ritual of the Mass because they understand it because they're Catholic. Okay. This is also like an elite military unit that uses hand signs, type of thing to communicate silently amongst themselves in the field. It's that sort of thing. And so this is less, I always thought it was just ridiculous to have an alignment language, but it's really an alignment code. And moving right along to how Moldvay defined a alignment. Let's take a quick look at this. So here he says the 3 basic ways of life guide the acts of both player, characters, and monsters. Each way of life is called an alignment. And it tells us the 3 alignments. So if we take that and we go back to our analogy of Roman Catholicism, Islam, as a way of life, I think this really begins to work. Not that we're thinking of alignment as religion, but as a way of life, and we use it analogous to a religion in the real world. Okay, I don't view it as an actual religion in the fantasy setting, but I'm using the analogy of the real world religion because it kind of works. Because there are a lot of people, what was the phrase? Wedding and funeral Catholics. I grew up Catholic. Wedding and funeral, Christmas and Easter Catholics. So they're Catholic. Don't talk to them about Pentecostalism. Don't talk to them about whatever. They're not interested in that, but they follow the way of life of being a Catholic. They show up for weddings and funerals. They show up at high holy days like Christmas and Easter. They do the sign of the cross. They say grace at supper. It's a very broad way of life. But let's continue this analogy a little bit further by going down and looking at this phrase, alignment. Okay, right here. Alignments give guidelines for characters to live by. The characters will try to follow these guidelines, but may not always succeed or be successful. If the DM feels the player is not keeping to the character's chosen alignment, the DM may suggest a change of alignment or give the character a punishment or penalty. Wow, that's really interesting. So the DM cannot force a change of alignment, but he can enforce a punishment or penalty. Now let's go back to the analogy of Roman Catholicism, and let's talk about this lack of following an alignment. Now, the obvious thing to do with a punishment or penalty, i.e. focus on the word penalty, would be like your basic curse, -1 curse. If it's armor, it's -1 against your armor class. If it's a sword, it's -1 to hit and damage. Or it could be the character's curse, like -1 for everything they roll. So yeah, you could do it mechanically, but I would say no, don't do it mechanically, because of the analogy of a Roman Catholic who's not being a good Catholic. What would happen to them? What would happen to somebody who's obviously breaking the Catholic way of life? What would happen to them in the real world? Well, they could get repudiated by their local priest. He could do the whole repent type of thing, right? So could be repudiated by the local priest, could be banned from receiving a sacrament by the local priest, or if he's more well known, maybe it's the bishop, the bigger, higher level of church leadership there. I don't think excommunication happens from anybody other than the Pope. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've was Catholic, but you could be excommunication. It could be that just other NPCs in the setting, other Catholics would be like, "Hey, dude, what's wrong with you?" You could get a verbal going at by other NPCs, other NPC Roman Catholics in the real world. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, I heard of you. You're the one who signed that law that went against the church's stand on whatever tenet of faith." Uh, so that could happen in the real world, but taken into the fantasy setting, um, you've got a local priest in a town, and he repudiates the person who he saw going against the alignment. So you might get like a verbal public shaming, repudiation by the local cleric. But if the issue goes on, he might just go, "That's it. I ban you from any sacraments." Well, what are the sacraments in a fantasy setting? Well, in a world where the party likes to go to the local cleric to get remove curse or extra healing or resurrection or reincarnation spell cast, this could be really consequential, of a punishment. But it is a punishment in setting. It's not mechanical at all. It's a punishment in setting. And it could go so far as to even be like an excommunication, if you had a level of priests that was like the equivalent of the Pope, say. And then how do you deal with that in setting? Well, you might have to do penance. The character might have to do penance. He might have to do a quest on behalf, trying to get the priest to forgive him. The priest might be, "All right, you got to do this quest." So it would be in-game drama, and it would be in-game consequences, and it would play out in-game and be interesting and cool, far better than same as a -1 curse on the character. So, but again, needs to be the player's choice whether the character converts alignment. And if they don't, they say, "No, I'm not converting alignment." Fine. Then you start having these in-game consequences, very much the same way you would enforce a consequence if you had a bunch of murder hobos. They were murder hoboing their way through the setting. They get to a town, and the town gates are shut, and they're like, "I'm sorry, we can't let you in here. We know you're a bunch of murder hobos. We don't want you in the town. And if you cause trouble, here's 25 bowmen on this section of the wall on this side of the gate, and 25 bowmen on that section of the wall to the left of the gate. And if you just leave, just go someplace else. We don't want you here in this town. The gates are closed to you." And if that's going to be a problem, then the bowmen already got their arrows knocked. They're already aiming. So I'm going to give them a +1 or a +2 for careful aim, and we're going to make 50 attack rolls the instant you do something that the leader of the town says, "That's it, done." So in game there should be consequences for bad choices, like murder hoboing or just breaking your alignment. But alignment should be viewed not so much as religion, but as a philosophy, a basic philosophy. Okay, now let's take a look. I created this document, and there's actually going to be a link in the show notes, and you'll be able to, it'll just be the link. You can download this and use this if you want. Now, I created the vocabulary for 3 alignment languages now, and we're going with the 3-point system for basic expert. And remember, these are signs, passwords, and gestures. And so I've specifically put some flavor in here by having, under law, you have the sign of law. And that's how somebody who follows the law philosophy, the law way of life, they use this quick sign that they do with their hand to identify themselves to other followers of law. Neutrality is the word of neutrality, and chaos is the gesture of chaos. And then you can see down through here, there are, like word of welcome for law and neutrality, but under chaos, it would be the shrug of live and let live. We've got a gesture of parlay that's going to be an important one. And all these others, sign of caution, sign of agreement, sign of disagreement, word of safe passage, gesture of silence, sign of danger, so on, all the way down here. Sign of mercy for law, and to a certain degree, there would be a sign of mercy for neutrality, but but there is no sign of mercy for chaos. It's just a gesture of disdain. So, under law and neutrality, there's a sign of fellowship, but there is no sign of fellowship. People who follow chaos, they have no sign of fellowship for each other at all. So how would this play out in game? I would say you print this and have it on the table. If the players want to use this, you can. And this would be useful like when you're dealing with a creature that has the right alignment, but you don't speak the language. And so looking for an example for, say, a lawful creature, Neanderthals in here are lawful. No explicit language that they are said to speak. So they're not explicitly said to speak common. I would have them not speak common, but a crude language, no written form, but they follow the philosophy of law. So therefore, a lawful character, say the fighter in the party is lawful, he could give the sign of law. He could use some of these signs for some communication, and this would be a role play event between the game master and the players. Or let's say you're in the forest and you encounter a pixie. Pixies are neutral. There's no specification as to what their languages are in here. So this would be a creature you would use the neutrality alignment language. And let's say the magic user is neutral. So he would give the sign of the word of neutrality and the word of welcome and a gesture for parlay. And then the pixie would respond. And there's a bunch of different concepts in here. So you should be able to do some communication with them. And you can add to this. You absolutely can add to this. I would personally, if I was playing a character, I would print this out on an index card, but only for the alignment language my character knows. And I would have one of those big index cards with the vocabulary on there, and I'd have it, and I'd say, all right, I'm going to give the gesture of retreat to this neutral creature that we have been fighting, saying we retreat, trying to back out of a combat, so I would, but it's not a language. You're not writing a script or writing a book or reciting poetry. You're just giving basic concepts. And so that's how you should use this in game. So the bottom line is that alignment language is not a language you put on your character sheet. It's more of a cultural shorthand for the soul. It's a secret handshake, a clandestine order, and it changes the game entirely. And it's something that can actually be used at the gaming table and have a little fun with. And you could actually introduce some encounters where it's not, unless the players want to fight, it's a role-play encounter, but not in any spoken language. It's done completely in alignment languages. And I hope I've given you the tool here with this vocabulary for the 3 alignment languages to do that. Now, one more item of business on this would be AD&D. AD&D has a 9-point alignment system. And I am not interested in doing a 9-point alignment system. But you know what? For AD&D, I would do a 4-point alignment system. And here's the reason why. Because you have the abyss, the plains of the abyss is where all the demons are, and they're chaotic evil. And then the 9 hells is where the devils are, and they're lawful evil. And the abyss and the hells are at war all the time. The abyss is trying to invade the 9 hells. And so you've got all this backstory. So I would actually, for AD&D, I would have at least 2 evil alignments, because chaotic evil and lawful evil are very, very different. And so I would preserve that whole, this is a way of life thing. with the devils and then with the demons. And then I would do a, neutral as one alignment language, one way of life. And then I would have law or good. And you might be able to maybe break it down to two, but I would not want to do a full 9 alignments languages there. Just very broad, kind of like basic does it, but I really feel like there should be a preservation of that chaotic evil and lawful evil. They're very, very different. They play out differently in Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and I would preserve that, and then just do neutral and good or law. I guess we have to go law, good if we're going to have lawful evil. But I would have these as very broad, maybe even give them names so it's the philosophy of the middle path or something along those lines, and go with it that way. I feel like that would be a very flexible system you could use in AD&D. I don't like the 9-point alignment system. It's too fiddly. A little broader. I think that's easier to play. Very much Moldvay basic, for sure. So this is Tom for Tabletop Tap Room. That's my new perspective on alignments and alignment languages after just a simple rereading of the Moldvay basic, word for word, cover to cover. It suddenly struck me. And that's how I'm going to be playing it at my table from now on. What do you do? Have you used alignment languages? Have they been used well in your game? What is your opinion? Please leave a comment in the comments below. And as always, I will see you at the gaming table.